I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to the Insider Insight Show. I am honored to have back with me someone who's a very dear friend and someone who has kept you ahead of the curve by years and been demonized for doing so. Craig Hemke. He, about 14 years ago, same time we started Operation Freedom, Craig started tfmetalsreport.com. And it has become the go-to financial platform on the internet. Why? Because it gives you information you'll never see, hear, read, or experience through the bought-off lamestream fake media, number one. Number two, it provides you that information so that you can take the appropriate actions to protect yourself as it relates to the financial weapons of mass destruction that have been placed in and around every person's financial security of the world. Now, people will tell you these financial weapons of mass destruction, well, they occurred because of, it was an accident. It's just a coincidence. It's because of incompetence. No, they were created and placed willfully. And the goal is to strip you and every person you know of your financial freedom, your liberty, your financial future, and frankly, your life. Because let's face it, if you're destitute, you become much easier target for them to strip you of everything. And this is why TF Metals Report is so important for you to have access to. Craig has created an incredible community there with incredible insight that puts you ahead of the curve. Now, there are many people that have financial sites, but they don't have the boots on the ground experience. Craig does. He was a licensed security professional for nearly 20 years, but he became disgruntled, much like I became disgruntled with the medical industrial complex. He became disgruntled with the financial industrial complex and decided, you know what, enough. I'm going another avenue. And that other avenue, much, much to the betterment of society, was the development of tfmetalsreport.com. It's my honor to welcome back Craig Hemke. Craig, welcome back.
Oh, my friend, you're always so effusive in your praise, and I'm always so grateful for the words you say, and they mean a lot, and I thank you for that. As you were speaking, I was thinking about all of that, and I was like, what do I do? What does this site do? It does a lot of things. But what came to me, and I never thought of it this way until the 60 seconds ago. And you remember how kind of groundbreaking the Drudge Report was back in the late 90s, right? Mm-hmm. And you would go to this one page, and there'd be all these links. It was like somebody that sifted through all of the crap out there. And the mountain of crap 25 years later is significantly larger than it was back then, but nonetheless, and I don't even go to that site anymore. I know that he sold it off to somebody and whatever, but that's kind of a little bit of what I do. Mm-hmm. I tell people I'm kind of their eyes and ears, and like you said, my background's in the securities industry, and I've all my stockbroker licenses and stuff like that. My degrees in economics, and so I try to look around at everything that happens over the course of the day, tell everybody what it is that I think is the most important, so you can kind of sift through it. But I'm also blessed with a pretty good memory, at least for now. I mean, who knows? I'm just turned 58, Doc. It's probably not going to be this way much longer. But I'm left with pretty good memory, and so I'll see stuff, and I'll go, wait a second. We talked about that 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. And my goodness, there's a lot of that going on today too, Dave. So anyway, thank you for the kind words.
So Craig, let's talk about these financial weapons of mass destruction. They're pervasive. They're beyond deleterious. And as I mentioned, they're not from incompetence or accident or coincidence that they've been planted to, if you will, take down every person in the world's financial security. Now, is that hyperbole?
You mean like derivatives and the stuff you see like on the reports from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency?
Yes.
Are they planted deliberately? Dave, I don't know. Maybe to some extent, I don't know if I go that far. I think some of it is just this financial master of the universe, greed is good kind of stuff. You see the numbers. People, I don't know, people listening to us have seen the number. You talk about whatever it is, $240 quadrillion of notional value of derivatives in the world, which are, again, just like, how do you even describe a derivative? It's just like a bet. It's like an insurance contract. It's like me looking at you off the books of like the stock market and the bond market and stuff like that, and saying, hey, I need to hedge and guarantee against a certain outcome, and you say, okay, I'll take that bet. And that's a derivative contract. It's so pervasive that now there's literally, I mean, we talk about trillions of dollars, right? And that's a mind-boggling number. People have seen, if you stack dollar bills to the moon, what is a trillion maybe gets to the moon, we're talking about 34 trillion. It's just a mind-boggling number. How many seconds are in a trillion, how many years a trillion seconds is how many, all that stuff. It's mind-boggling. Well, a quadrillion is 1,000 times that. Now, it's that way mainly because of greed and the financialization of the monetary system, and this the financial masters of the universe that think they've got it all under control. And you sit here, we're in 2024 and things keep humming along, and they'll say, well, it's only 240 trillion because, it's on my books, it's on your books, Dave, it's on these other banks' books, it's on these hedge funds' books, and we're all taking care of each other. So it's not like, it's this pyramid that's, or a house of cards is about to collapse. But problem is, and as we saw in 2008, it really can begin to collapse if if you're my counterparty on some of these bets, and suddenly you run into financial trouble. Well, now all of a sudden I'm in financial trouble. And if I'm in financial trouble, everybody to whom I'm a counterparty is in financial trouble. And that's where it can spin out of control. That's the basis of much of what monetary policy has been since 2008, is to kind of keep that all, under wraps and keep it spinning. That's what the banksters do. But anyway, I don't know if it was set up deliberately to enslave people by taking all, by crushing everybody and taking their assets, but that could ultimately be an outcome. Certainly.
Well, and when these cats get in trouble, like in 2007, 2008, for the most part, they get bailed out by all of us, the taxpayer. The way the system has been created. So they can take on these risks with the knowledge that, hey, we have enough people bought and paid for in the government where they will just enact legislation to bail us out.
Right. Dave, I was sitting here before I started TF Metals Report. This must have been 2008. And I was trading every day in my IRA, the short S&P things. What was it? S and D. I can't even remember what the symbols are. Right. And the market's falling, like 600-700 points a day. And I'll never forget. I was sitting in this very same spot I'm sitting here now. I had a TV on over my shoulder. And, they'd come for the Lehman thing was a disaster, an AIG and Countrywide Finance, all of these things. It was a debacle of the day. And the markets are going down and nobody's panicking. It's just like, whoa, what are we going to do? And then the day came that Goldman Sachs was in trouble. And oh my God, you'd have thought it was the end of the world.
That's right.
Everything changed. Suddenly,
well, that's because they do God's work.
Well, yeah, right. But that's the one that everybody's connected to. All the politicians are connected to. Everybody in the Treasury Department is connected to. As soon as Goldman Sachs was in trouble, you got Bernanke, you got Tim Geithner. What was the other dude that was the Goldman Sachs guy?
John Corzine.
Paulson.
Who was, Hank Paulson. Yeah.
Boom, all of a sudden the very next day, they're in front of Congress talking about how, if we don't get this treasured asset recovery program or whatever, troubled asset republic, whatever TARP,
yeah.
We don't get that, oh boy. And that's when it changed everything. And it kind of, you can relate this to today in that it amazes me. There are otherwise people I think are brilliant, really smart, that think, oh yeah, this time is different. The Fed, they're going to keep rates high. and they're going to keep hiking until they slay that inflation dragon. And okay, if they can keep rates high for an extended period of time, then I guess they will. But if push comes to shove, if all of a sudden the market is in a free fall, if all of a sudden this daisy chain of derivative gets set off, and there are liquidity things that are, issues that are affecting the banks, the Fed is going to cut that rate as fast as they possibly can. Middle income people be damned. It's the price we got to pay. Yeah, your inflation is going to remain high, but at least your bank's going to stay open. So we made the right call. That's what the new paradigm is. It's been that way since 2008. That is how it will operate going forward.
And the same government puppets that are propping up the banksters, they're in the process of bringing down the reserve currency of the dollar, if we look at their policies, right? And many people say, well, they don't realize they're doing it. Or it's an accident. It's a coincidence. It's incompetence, right? And Craig, you were one of the first people back in March of 2022 when they sanctioned Russia and essentially froze, is the probably PC term, as opposed to stole, $300 billion worth of Russia's assets in foreign exchange markets, just took them. You usurped them. And you said at the time, and we're one of the very few people saying, look, this is a recipe for war. This is a recipe to destroy the dollar, because who's going to want to hold dollars if you're on the wrong side of a policy position? If you're a country, it'll be well, Craig, they keep double and tripling down. I mean, what's the latest, right? The National Security Council came out with a piece of, this is a good thing to do. A Senate panel just voted 20-1 to say, yeah, let's not just confiscate it, but let's hand it over to Ukraine. And Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, whatever you want to call her, she was just out this week and said, I think this is a good idea and we should send that money to Ukraine. Craig, that's a declaration of war against Russia, but it's also a declaration of war against the end of the United States dollar's reserve currency. Is that hyperbole?
No. And I'll give you one more as we record this. I just saw this morning a headline from I call him PETUS, President Emeritus of the United States, not POTUS, from Biden, saying he wants a plan as to how to do this, to actually steal Russia's foreign currency reserves and give them to Ukraine. He wants a plan for that before they get to the G7 meeting next month. Or maybe it's in April. Either way. So these trial balloons have been floated. I've seen this occasionally over the last couple of months, and now, this is clearly the direction it's headed. Dave, you asked me why. Again, I think it's easy to say that because you see this, I see this on I got to watch this stuff every day, like I said, for all my subscribers. It's really easy to just go down the route and say, well, they're doing this on purpose because they have some grand plan. They're not that smart. I think it's hubris. It is emotional, right? So many, I don't mean to get overly political, but so many progressive ideas are based on emotion, right? Makes me feel good, to whatever policy. They're not necessarily based in logic. They're based in emotion. So it feels good to say, we're going to teach those nasty Ruskies. We're going to take their money and give it to Ukraine so they can build back. Yeah, I feel like I've done my good deed for the day. And it's hubris. Look, even Yellen and Biden, who are pushing 80, were not alive prior to 1944 and the U.S. having this crazy superpower of being the world's reserve currency, thus always creating demand for our currency, which means we can print as much as we want and ship it around the world and not really feel the impacts of all the inflation. So they're drunk on this hubris that they think we can do whatever we want, right? I think those two things are at the core of why they're doing this. Now, you mentioned 2022. It was about this time 2 years ago that after 8 years of setting it up, eventually here came Russia and invaded Ukraine, everything, this, and it's a terrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to minimize how horrible it is and all the people that have died, and we don't need to get into all that. But by the end of the year, I said the most important thing that happened, and I said this at the time in March, the most important thing that happened, the most longest lasting impact of this war, at least so far, came on the first weekend of March, about 2 weeks after the war started, when the U.S. announced two things. They were expelling or freezing Russia's ability to access the SWIFT system, SWIFT, which is the international payment system. So if you are the Russian government, a Russian company, a Russian individual, you need to move money around the planet. You do it through this SWIFT system, the U.S. dollar base. And we froze them out, said, you don't have access to that anymore. Okay. Then also Russia, they do business. They have, literally for decades in U.S. dollars, as U.S. reserve currency. If you're going to trade, if Russia's going to trade with China, and they don't want to take the currency risk of trading in rubles and yuan, the intermediary currency is a dollar, the world's reserve currency. Okay. So you build up these foreign currency reserves in dollars. Well, the Russian central bank keeps a lot of that in Russia, but they've also got it sprinkled around the world and other central banks around the world to help facilitate trade. And what the U.S. said was, nope, we're going to freeze that. And Russia will no longer be able to access those funds. It's like going into your bank, Dave, and the bank says, yeah, I know you got $10,000 here, but we're not going to let you use any of it.
Cyprus.
You'd be like, what?
Yeah.
That's what they did. Okay, so that alone, 2 years ago, taught the rest of the world a very valuable lesson.
Right.
Okay, if your interests don't align with the United States interest, and at least 95% of the time, this is what they'll do to you. This is what the U.S. will do to you. And the world's interest, everybody's got their own self-interest, okay? It's a multipolar, everybody's going to look out for, these other politicians want to get reelected too. So your interests are not always necessarily going to align with the U.S. But now the U.S. has told you, if you don't follow, you don't do what we tell you, where we're going to freeze your money and we're going to kick you out of our system. Okay, well, now we're taking it one step farther. We're going to actually steal your money. Okay? And we're going to give it to your enemy, your adversary. Dave, on the currency situation, this goes a long ways toward obliterating confidence in using the world U.S. currency. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but when we look back 10 years from now or whatever, the other part is, I can't even imagine what the Russian reaction will be to this. I mean, Dave, again, you're a student of history. A lot of people listening to this are students of history. Didn't everybody ascribe setting up World War II because of how World War I was settled?
Yes.
Okay, and again, what happened, in Versailles and the armistice, Germany was forced to pay war reparations to France and Belgium and everybody else for the war. Okay, to the victors goes the spoils. Okay, fine. That's not what this is.
No, it's not. Germany
at that time didn't have it. I mean, what were they going to do?
Right.
Dave, this is, anyway, we could, I hesitate. You hear me kind of blubbering because I'm going to say something that people are going to think I really think I'm crazy. You and I have lived under the specter of nuclear annihilation our whole lives.
Right.
You're way much older than me, so you were alive during the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right, I was underneath my desk in first grade, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I wasn't. I wasn't born until '66, but I lived through the '70s and the '80s. And you always knew that was a possibility, but you always figured it's pretty remote, right? Mutually assured destruction, all that stuff, and it's still very remote. But I can't look at you, Dave, and I can't look at everybody watching right now, and tell you with certainty that there's a 100% certainty that we're all going to make it to the end of 2024.
Yeah.
It's not 50%. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's a 50-50 chance. Oh boy, you better get your bunker ready. But it's not 100% either. This is really, really bad policy. And we're just going to have to see what happens because they're definitely doing it.
And they can launch a tactical nuke, as you said. It could lead to that. It could also lead to a tactical nuke in the financial markets.
Right.
One joint communique between Russia and China, and you tell me if I'm off, about saying, oh, well, we've set up this alternative payment system to SWIFT since we were kicked out of it. And we've also, we've accumulated a significant number of countries in the BRICS system, including the 41 other countries that want to join us. And we've set up a trading platform and a trading currency. Well, we're currently going to back that trading currency in hard assets, gold, silver, oil, natural gas, whatever it might be, food, commodities, the like. And, well, there you go. That would be a financial tactical nuke that would obliterate the reserve currency of the dollar. Craig, am I off?
No, it's the only. I wouldn't use the word obliterate. I would think of it as a slash instead. You know, the Knights of, not the Knights of Need, but the Dark Knight, you know, standing there and Monty Python, you know, and he cuts off his arm.
Yeah, what are you going to do, bleed on me?
Come on. It's more like that.
Yeah.
Because the argument about, you know, replacing the dollar as a reserve currency is always so oversimplified, as if it's some binary thing. That one day you're going to wake up and the dollar is going to be all powerful, and then the next day you're going to wake up and it's not. And it's going to be toilet paper. No, it's just incremental, just nipping away at it, you know, and as demand for the dollar falls, this is Econ 101, Dave, you know, where if anybody took econ in college, you have a curve, you know, you have an x-axis and a y-axis, you got a demand curve and a supply curve, and in the middle where they meet is your price. Okay, and as you shift those curves, the price shifts.
Yep.
And this is simple Econ 101. If the demand for dollars, as you eat away at this reserve currency ability, if the demand for dollars falls while the supply of dollars increases, I mean, we're running $2 trillion annual deficits that's being funded by the Federal Reserve and, you know, and everything else. Got demand falling, supply increasing. What does that mean if it's for oranges? Right? What does it mean for anything? It means a lower price, a lower value, a lower equilibrium, okay? And that's what's going on. Again, you cannot, I don't see how there's any way anyone logical, honest thinker can avoid this conclusion. If you are the Russians and the Chinese and the Indians and anybody else, and you've seen, wait a second, not only do they kick Russia out of the system, they're stealing their money. We've got to come up with something. We're going to have to watch out for ourselves, and we're going to have to come out with our own system, a swift alternative between us. We can bypass this U.S. thing completely. Oh, and we better come up with another currency as well to use within that system, something we can all trust. Now, how do we know we can all trust it? We'll back it with some gold, just like the U.S. dollar was after World War II. We'll back it with gold. That'll give everybody confidence that it's okay to use. And then we'll have our own transfer of payment system. We'll have our own currency to use within it. And then the dollar in the U.S. can fondue, man. We won't even need them. Again, that doesn't mean the dollar goes away. That doesn't mean, you know, all the uses of the dollar to perpetuate, you know, all this current system and all the derivatives, that it just goes away. It just means it makes it a lot less valuable. Okay? And that is a certainty. You know, the other stuff that I worry about, you know, you just pray that cooler heads will prevail. But the financial stuff, I just don't see how that isn't going to happen. And this just accelerates. It's this idea they're going to steal their money, their Russian money.
And then you add to it what you've touched on, the fact that we're 34 trillion and growing dollars in debt. You add to it, as you outlined earlier, the derivative positions throughout the world. A report recently came out, the five banking institutions in the United States have J.P. Morgan Chase, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Morgan Stanley have $233 trillion in bets, derivatives on the books. 233 with a T, trillion dollars. You add to it legislation such as when Clinton got rid in 1999 of the Glass-Steagall, separated commercial banking from the the investment side of it, if you
Investment
want to call
world.
it, right?
Yeah.
Or the derivative side of the world, what they're doing there, and kind of merged it all together, which put everybody kind of in the soup, right?
Yeah.
You add all these things together, and you get, and add to it some manipulated markets, right? I mean, we got a couple banksters now from J.P. Morgan Chase sitting in jail for manipulating the precious metals market, right? I mean, it took too long, and I don't think their sentences were as long as they could have been, and they sure didn't go as high up the totem pole as they could have. But still, you got a couple banksters sitting in there for manipulating markets. You add all that together, Greg, and that soup is a financial weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with you, Dave.
So then the question is, Craig, what do people do to protect themselves?
Well, that's, I'm struggling. How do I phrase this?
Because if I say this, if you listen to Fox Business News, Stuart Varney or CNBS or Kramer, the way you protect yourself is buying NVIDIA, buying Netflix,
Right.
buying Microsoft.
Right.
Really?
Right.
Really? That's gonna okay.
Well, and that's why I kind of pause. You've I'm sure heard the phrase. What is it? John Maynard Keynes that said, the market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. Right? Was it
Right.
Keynes that said that?
Yeah, I think it was actually. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's true.
Yeah.
And so there's human. You almost have to overcome human nature to disassociate yourself from the crowd, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in everything, whether it's politics, whether it's questioning institutions, whatever. It's so much easier and enticing to just be a big part of the crowd and feel like you're one of the cool kids doing what everybody else is doing. And obviously there's, in an environment like this, you can enrich yourself. Look at all the politicians that Nancy Pelosi and everybody else that have used their information, to buy calls on NVIDIA. And what's Nancy Pelosi's latest at Palo Alto?
Palo Alto. Yeah. Right. Cybersecurity firm. What?
Dave, I caught myself looking up the other day going, I wonder if you bought some out of the money options on that, because it's probably going to go up if Nancy,
Right.
And if I'm thinking that way, I mean, countless, others think that way. But I think it's imprudent to just simply be a part of the crowd at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just imperative that you educate yourself and think for yourself so that you're not caught up with the crowd and can kind of plan ahead. We call it, prepare accordingly at my site. So what do you do? Like I said, financial history is replete with examples of tyrannical and despotical governments that, to fund their wars and to placate the masses and retain power, they just print their currency into oblivion. I mean, people know about the Romans calling in their coins and shaving them off and making them smaller, that kind of thing. People know about that. People, have seen the famous pictures of, we talked about what happened after World War I, the guy walking down the street with a wheelbarrow full of
Deutschmarks.
Deutschmarks.
Yeah. Weimar Germany.
We've seen recently, the stories of this Milei guy in Argentina, trying to combat inflation that's going up 100% a month or 20% a month, 120%, whatever it is. So what happens when a currency fails like that, when it's printed into oblivion, is the reason why you have those events is a complete loss. If you're going to use that currency as a medium of exchange and you have no confidence in what value it retains, then that's why the shopkeeper who's selling that loaf of bread says, okay, I want 100,000 marks for this. Well, wait a second, it was 50,000 marks yesterday. Well, yeah, because I know it's going to be 150,000 tomorrow. And this psychology takes over like that. The reason why the US dollar has this power of the world's reserve currency is because coming out of World War II, US won and was mostly undamaged. I mean, all the other global economies from, Japan, Germany, everywhere around the world were completely obliterated, right?
Very true.
The U.S. had the manufacturing base and we had the gold, 25,000 tons of it. Okay, so we could back the dollar and say, okay, for every $35 is backed with an ounce of gold. And if you want to use a dollar, you can come to us at any time, cash in 35 of them, we'll give you an ounce. And that's why the dollar was the reserve currency. So you went from, in places where there was no confidence, all of a sudden you have something that's completely backed with a hard asset like gold that's been money for millennia, and you're like, oh, I have confidence in that. That's why the BRICS will do the same thing when they offer, some other kind of trading currency. And that's what the individual should do, Dave.
Right.
I mean, we see the biggest demand for physical gold right now for the last 2 or 3 years has been global central banks like Poland, Turkey, Kazakhstan. You go around the world. They're taking their dollars, again, foreign currency reserves, and they're buying gold. Why? Because, they can know what's coming. Well, that's what individuals should do too. It doesn't mean you shouldn't, if you want to play along and try to make a few extra bucks, trading in and out of NVIDIA, knock yourself out. But you should definitely be diversifying into physical gold, because that's how this ends. I don't know if it'll be next month, next year, 10 years from now, but it's inevitably how it ends, because it's always how it's ended in the past. And that's how it'll end this time too.
Craig, many people are hesitant to do that, because the information they're provided through what we call the bought off lamestream fake media is, do the NVIDIA thing, the Netflix thing, the Microsoft thing, the whatever thing, the paper asset thing. They're not told what you just inform people as far as the true store of value, right? And then other people, when they get beyond that and they listen to Craig and they go, okay, well, I'm not, but in doing a little research, it appears that these precious metals markets that are a store of value, well, they're heavily manipulated. And I'm afraid that they're going to keep heavily manipulating these markets. And it's a store of value, but it's not going to appreciate the way it really should. What do you say to those folks?
Well, Dave, we could talk about this for, if I were to give you a thorough, full answer, it'd probably take me at least a half hour.
Right.
What I would say to those folks is, again, understand the economics. And you mentioned earlier about derivatives.
Yeah.
And again, what's a derivative? It provides leverage, and you can, there's not 240 quadrillions worth of dollars, or currency in the world. Is there? No. But it's that dollar has been bet and rebet and re-leveraged and rehypothecated over and over and over again, multiplying by a fraction of 10 or 20 each time. You can take a treasury note and use it as collateral for buying more treasury notes, and your broker dealer or whoever you work with will, because it's good, solid American treasury, you put up $100,000, they'll loan you $90,000 to buy more. So then you can take that $90,000 and buy $81,000 more. Okay, so that's how it gets multiplied through the use of this derivatives and credit. Okay, that's pervasive, and that's exactly what is under holding down the price of gold. Because there are only so many physical ounces of gold. Most people have seen, the little infographics that say, all the gold mined that we know of around the world fills up a Olympic-sized swimming pool, or it's a cube 20 meters across and 30 meters, whatever. Okay? Well, we learned coming out of World War II, when you could convert your paper dollars into gold, that there's not enough gold.
That's right.
And eventually, countries like France rebuilt, and it started trading again. And by the 1960s, they had a pile of dollars, and De Gaulle and the rest said, you know what? We'd like to trade in Z gold for some of those Z dollars. Bad French accent, Dave. Sorry.
Yeah, that's good though.
But that caused a crisis, right? And that's ultimately when Nixon suspended that in 1971. So no, we're not going to do that anymore. Okay. So what has happened since is the amount of gold has grown marginally through gold mining and the rest over the last 50 years. But the amount of the derivatives that act as pretend gold, it's just as good as gold, Dave, it offers exposure to the price, has grown exponentially. Just like I said in the example of the treasury bonds, 100,000 gets you 90, gets you 81, gets you 72. Okay. That's the derivatives of pretend gold is what underpin the price that you pay in this physical market. And when all of this, you call it financial weapon of mass destruction, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to melt. That's going to fall apart too. Meltdown that'd be a cute little pun, I guess, when we talk about gold. So while this current system exists, if based off of the trading of all this phony baloney plastic banana fake, gold allows you to take 2,000 of your dollars and exchange it for 1 ounce of gold, oh God, do it. Take them up on it. Okay, please don't take every dollar you got and do that. You wouldn't do that with anything, right? No. But if the system is manipulated, whether it's daily on the trading in the banks or just in general, this alchemy that has created the appearance that there's far more metal than there really is, and that's all going to collapse someday, then take them up on it. Somebody wants to, if you could take $23 and somebody will give you an ounce of silver, do it. Go for it. And then use it to your advantage.
And Craig, around the world, in China right now, we see a market being set up for physical, as you discussed, physical precious metals, as opposed to the paperback exchanges in the West. Yeah. And you see a higher price, a notably higher price on those physical exchanges, don't you?
Yes, you do. But it's only maybe 4 or 5% higher, right? Which, again, in the way the current market is set up, shouldn't exist, Dave.
No.
There should be a global price. Why? Because you can move things around the planet in a keystroke. So if this was truly a functioning market and you can buy gold in London or New York at $2,050 and you can sell it in China for $2,150, why wouldn't you do that? And buyers here and sellers here should bring the price into equilibrium. But it's not happening. It's just another sign of the lack of physical metal so that people don't have the confidence to make that trade. And I'll give you one more, Dave. This has been going on. Not as long as I've had this site since 2010. This really became an issue beginning about 2013 or 14. Is this flow of metal from the West to the East. From the U.S. and the U.K. to China, Russia, Hong Kong, Turkey, India, whatever. The metal backing the price, that's determined in London and New York is going away. The Fed hasn't been on. Most people know that. No one's been to Fort Knox. The New York Fed, the gold they hold at West Point, none of that's ever been audited. They play musical chairs in London with the gold that's allegedly in the vaults there. And so what has been happening is the gold that's in the West, usually people have seen the big heavy 400-ounce bars, right? The big, like I got one on my desk. Well, I don't actually have one.
There's a great picture of Putin holding the big, oh, look at that, right?
Nobody come to my house. This isn't real, okay? It's a piggy bank, okay? But people have seen these, okay?
Vladimir Hemke.
There you go. But anyway, this is, again, if it was real, I wouldn't be able to do this. Okay. All right. But this is the Western standard.
Right.
Okay. It's 400 troy ounces. It's extraordinarily heavy. Gold's a very dense metal. Okay. That's not the Eastern standard. Okay. The Eastern standard is a kilobar. Okay. A kilogram of bars, and they're about that big.
Right.
Looks like a breakfast cookie that my wife eats, okay? A little bigger than one of those Milano cookies that you can't stop eating from Hillsbury Farms. Okay, Anyway. How do you go from this? Whoops, sorry, Dave. How do you go from this to that? You ship this to Switzerland.
Right.
Switzerland's where all the refiners are that run basically 24/7. They melt these down. A lot of these aren't even 100%, 99% pure. They're like the U.S. A lot of U.S. bars that are allegedly in Fort Knox are only 90%. So you ship these off to Switzerland. They melt them down. They get all the impurities out. The other stuff that's in there, the copper and the nickel and the whatever, and then they recast it into kilobars that are 99.99% pure gold. Last month alone, Dave, January, exports of gold through Switzerland. 212 metric tons.
Wow.
Okay, exported through. So that means gold comes into Switzerland,
right,
like this,
Yep.
from the West,
Yep.
backing up the paper prices. They refine it, and then they ship it off to Turkey and to India and to Hong Kong and China and Russia, you name it. Well, that really can only go on for so long, Dave.
Right.
So, again, getting back to the system and the derivative pricing and everything else, yeah, you can sit there and look at, my gold's only gone up 9% a year this century, and it has. The average annual return's like 9.3%. The banks that run the system, they're good with that. They can manage that. They can make a lot of money at 10. What they can't make a lot of money at is 50% a year.
Mm-hmm.
But you can sit there and go, I only make it 9% a year. Great. That used to be pretty good. But eventually, once the world wakes up and figures out, again, all those derivatives collapse, the weapon of mass destruction, gold's not going to be, you're not going to be able to buy an ounce of gold for $2,000 US. No. And that's why you buy it now.
So, Craig, in our final minutes together today, educate our listeners about TF Metals Report and how they can become a subscriber.
Well, thank you, Doc. I should have you do it because you've been a subscriber to my site and I'm a subscriber to your site.
From the beginning.
We have like this little circular money flow going.
In fact, you were the person I called when I was contemplating opening on the subscription side of the platform, and you were incredible help, and I always thank you for that.
Well, I was glad to do it. Again, and I think most people have seen now. That's how you can't rely on online advertising, especially in a world where Google and YouTube and everybody else can just cut you off the knees, or your credit card processor will cut you off. Mm-hmm. If you say something wrong. So anyway, so my site is like that too. I mean, it's $15 a month. So I aggregate all this information. I analyze price. I give you some idea. Maybe this is a good time to buy. Maybe this is a good time not to buy because, we're watching the price trend, stuff like that. You can interact with the community. Like you said, people around the world. The beautiful thing about 50 cents a day is it keeps the people out that are just wanting to cause trouble.
Right.
And so we can actually have conversations. You can actually express your opinions. And that can be cathartic as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's 50 cents a day. It's $15 a month. But I don't know. It's my site, so obviously I'm biased. But I compared to other media out there, I mean, what do you pay for Amazon Prime or the New York Times? Not that anybody's here is, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty good deal.
TFMetalsReport.com. Craig, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. Thank you, folks, for joining us. Until next time, Dave Janis signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.